I am Alderman Ward 1, Kevin Lauer. I was elected 4 years ago, and I've been serving along with our current mayor. I ran because I believe Bloomington deserves better. And that is the basics of what I'm committed to. I believe that we are on a track that is an impending financial and structural crisis. We need to get our priorities straight. We have been invested for decades purchasing real estate, investing in subsidization of arts and sports, bike trails, library expansions, zoo expansions, many amenities that are very nice to have, but they aren't essentials, and they aren't essential services. I think we need to get back to basics. We have a number of issues that we've been ignoring, such as our potable water system, storm and sanitary sewers, and our street resurfacing program. We are underfunding all of those programs, and we need to do better. There are some public safety investments that I believe that we could make to help better manage those departments, and those are some things I would like to look at increasing into the future. I would hold the line on any new taxes and fees. I'm very concerned with our local economy and the business environment in general. I think that we're negatively affecting small business as well as the citizen in terms of our cost of living that keeps rising. Quality of life is affordable living. I do have a management background with over 30 years of private sector small business management experience. I know that there are some better ways to do things, and I would like to bring my experience in the private sector to the public sector and try to look at things from the inside out. And under our home rule ability, I would like to be able to break down some barriers to entry to allow for new startups. I am very concerned with creating jobs in Bloomington, and I think that the only way that we're going to get that in the short term is through small business investment. One of the things that I came across here, even in the last 2 weeks, is a conversation with a well-known commercial realtor who is frustrated that it's taking over 6 weeks to redevelop some of the shops and areas that folks are trying to get startups going. And most of that is in our inspection and permit basis. And so we need to be able to speed that up. It would be ideal to be able to come in and get those things done in a 24-hour period and allow for folks to start.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Mayor?
Thank you very much. Again, I've had the privilege to be mayor of Bloomington for the last 4 years, but I've got over 30 years experience with boots on the ground experience in local government. I worked for the International City County Management Association in the late 1980s, where I dealt with a wide range of problems with cities, frankly, throughout the world. And I was on our McLean County Board for 12 years, 8 years of which I was chair of the Justice Committee that supervised 2/3 of the county's $75 million budget. And now, of course, I've been mayor for 4 years, and I think we've made great progress on many fronts. The things that I ran on are the things that I tried to deliver on. The area we had the most success in is the thing I have the most control over, of course, and that's transparency and open government. We had an F from the Illinois Policy Institute when I was elected. We now have an A+. They've given us actually 2 awards. I hold regular mayoral open houses from 4:30 to 5:30 on Friday, just before every city council meeting. Citizens can come by and ask any questions. Sometimes we can solve problems right on the spot in real time. And so we usually have the city manager, perhaps even the finance director there to answer questions if possible. Now, in addition to that, we've got a Citizens 101 Academy. We have boards and commissions that are now more reflective of our community. We have young people, millennials, East Siders, West Siders, people of color, gays, straights. We have boards and commissions that look more like Bloomington. And frankly, we're going to make better decisions because of that. In addition, in the area of streets and infrastructure, that's the area where we have moved forward. We've spent about 300% more on street resurfacing than we have in the past. And we now do have a complete capital master plan. And so this is where I would actually differ with Alderman Lauer. We have not been ignoring water or our infrastructure. We just had a presentation last night at the city council meeting on how we are going to drill a little deeper into a more close aquifer than Muhammad Aquifer. And we've been talking about making sure that we have a long-term interest, and I know Kevin has been involved in this as well, in drilling down into the Muhammad Aquifer for our long-term needs. Now, when it comes to growing the local economy, I think we've had great success at creating jobs in the local economy. Now, notwithstanding things like the closing of Mitsubishi, we have had two largely abandoned strip malls that are now sources of economic activity, with Hy-Vee and, of course, with the creation of a TIF district and the Empire Crossing. If it were up to my opponent, he voted against TIF district. We would still have a vacant building. We would actually not have Ovation Cinema. And another alderwoman voted against even giving Ovation Cinema a liquor license. We'd have an abandoned building out there, not a $7 million investment. That's why I'm very proud to have the endorsement of the Chamber of Commerce and the Bloomington Normal Realtors Association. They can see what we've been doing. We also wouldn't have Green Top Grocery. We worked very hard on that. Mr. Lauer opposed that. It's the first multi-million-dollar investment in Bloomington on Constitution Trail. There are no shortage of those investments in Normal on Constitution Trail. This is our first. And so we're making lots of progress. We've got a downtown revitalization plan, which is critical to our historic core. We spent a year getting grant funding for the Route 66 Visitor Center. And once those two pieces came into play, we started to get lots of private investment interest in our downtown outside of our immediate region. That's one of the main means by which we're going to continue to grow the local economy. We're acquiring strategic properties, including the old Electrolux building. We are expanding as part of southeast part of downtown in terms of the library. And so we are moving Bloomington forward, and I'm proud of the progress that we've made. And I'd be honored to have your support for the next 4 years.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned downtown, Mayor Renner, so we'll start with you. What are your immediate and long-term plans for downtown Bloomington?
Well, immediately we have actually several different, we've got the downtown plan, we've got the comprehensive plan, which actually very nicely dovetail with each other. And they suggest we need an additional anchor. Once we got we got the Route 66 Visitor Center right after we passed the revitalization plan. So in the immediate sense, depends on how we define immediate, we're constantly looking for an anchor project, and whether that is at the front and center building or whether or not that's across the street from the Coliseum to help the Coliseum, I don't want to say make more money, but to be less unprofitable, to make the Coliseum more successful as we go forward. I think that's one of the more important things. Also, working with the library with their expansion. They've had a 150% increase in their circulation since the last time they expanded, and so they do need to expand. Now, whether it's at the current site, that's mostly what we've assumed, then that would become a destination, frankly, rather than the city dump. And that would be an important anchor for our downtown. You could snake the bike trail there, you could snake the bike trail to downtown, and all kinds of interconnectivity. And so I think a vibrant downtown is critical. When I was at the Illinois Municipal League 2 meetings ago, there was an investor from Texas who came in, and he said, in fact, from Dallas, and he says the first thing that he and his people do is, when they're thinking of investing in a place, they go look at the downtown, even if they're not going to invest in the downtown. Because if they go to a place and their downtown is deteriorating, this is not a city that gets economic development. And so they move on to other places. So in the long term, we'd like to have obviously proper parking, and we'd like to encourage as much proper private investment as we can get. And again, our plan is somewhat flexible. So if we get an anchor, depending on what that anchor is or where it is, that will then give us fewer degrees of freedom than moving forward. It's not quite like a business plan. Any kind of community development plan has got to be very flexible. Thank you.
Kevin?
Well, getting back to my statement on allowing for small business startups, I think downtown has a very inviting cost of doing business, good foot traffic, and so the entry-level businesses could have a retail outlet in our downtown very easily, and we're seeing things move away from such as Eastland Mall and the big boxes, and so I think we're going to see a resurgence. But I think that probably from a governmental standpoint, it's the lack of understanding what it takes to get a small business up and running in a short period of time, and the limited amount of capital that folks have to get that moving along. And so when it takes 6 or 8 weeks to get the permits and get the process rolling, that's really too long. There's a cost of doing business, there's a cost of capital, And if we could speed that process up, streamline it, and allow for folks to come in and invest and get things rolling so they've got basically a turnkey operation in a short period of time, that's going to spur a lot of folks to invest in our downtown. And that brings private investment, and the word travels very, very quickly. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do to help downtown, as well as much of our periphery. Much of our periphery is under the same kind of scrutiny and under the same kind of boundaries, barriers to entry. And so from an outside standpoint, having dealt with building and with development, there are some barriers that we could help folks with, especially in a recessionary period where they might invest and might be able to get things rolling and get some cash returns on investment very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a possibility of just a clarification redirect?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to say, I would absolutely agree with Kevin on that, and that's why for the last year and a half we've been working with Tom Daberreiner on one-stop shopping so that we can make this much more effective and efficient. And the thing that happens when I meet with people who are coming to Bloomington or want to expand or they're having problems, I give them my personal cell phone number. And I said, if you have problems, you call me. And I've yet to have a situation where someone's called me with a problem that we haven't been able to solve when it comes to somebody having a delay. Because usually when I call, then it's handled, if not immediately, within 24 hours. Now, if somebody wants an exception that's clearly a violation and a health hazard, that's a whole different story. But if it's just some bureaucratic paper pushing, I'm more than happy to rattle bureaucratic cages in half. Thanks.
Can I rebut just a little bit? I was not against those other businesses. I am against the government support for those businesses in a time when taxpayer funding is at a premium. We cannot risk the taxpayers' dollars on private investment. Private investment is willing to invest on their own. They don't have to be encouraged. And many of the investors that he mentioned have multi-million-dollar facets. They don't need our dollars, and they don't need a guarantee. They need speed, and they need the government to do what the government is supposed to be doing in a cost-effective manner. Thank you.
Going on to the next question.
Okay.
The Metro Zone Agreement and management of the Coliseum under Central Illinois Area Management are examples of contracts that weren't working to the city's advantage. What other contracts do you see in need of review and possibly ending?
Okay. Well, the most important one, actually, was the Coliseum contract. The Coliseum contract with Central Illinois Arena Management was a 10-year agreement, which is absolutely not standard. It's off the charts. It did not protect the city. Giving you one example, we went from giving 68% of the profits for concessions to the management company to 5%, which is more the going rate. And that's only one of many illustrations. That it didn't protect the city. We've had lots of very bad agreements that are sometimes jaw-dropping. Now, as we go forward, and there are none that immediately occur to me, I'd like us to get into a situation where we contract perhaps with the town of Normal for them to provide us with fire service in the northeast quadrant. They build it, and then we help. Or the reverse. The issues of blending the two would be just a legal nightmare, particularly because of two unions. But I'd like to see something like that happen so that both of us will benefit and both communities, northeast quadrants, will be safer.
Kevin?
I also am not aware of anything impending in the immediate future in terms of a contract that needs to be reviewed. I'm sure there are some out there that neither one may be exposed to at this point. But one of the things that I would like, my private sector experience brings me to a cost-plus type of mindset. In other words, if we engaged the county, townships, and the town of Normal in a buying process, such as our street resurfacing program, we're buying a massive amount of materials. If we contracted with the same supplier to get a volume and a consistent volume, we might be able to garner a cheaper fare over the time period. And we have a large amount of investment that we need to make in our streets. And so possibly changing the way in which we're purchasing those materials might allow for a little bit better pricing structure.
Okay.
If I could just clarify on that, it's a good idea, but we've actually been doing it, and so does Stark. So I don't think, the marginal cost of the materials are not our biggest problem right now.
That's true.
It's really choreographing, which we get to about $8 million. Our staff in Stark, that's about all we can do within a season. Maybe 8 to 10 million if you push it.
One of the things that we could do, sir, though, is allow for a longer period of time to guarantee them work so that we don't have a fluctuation in our budget. So if we have a guaranteed $8 million to $10 million for the city of Bloomington to go forward to fix our streets into the future and to keep them repaired, those folks are going to feel like they can do business with us and expand a little bit, hire a few more employees, buy a little bit more material, more equipment, and have more ability to handle what we need to do.
I agree, because that was essentially My Streets 2.0, $20 million bond. That's
Okay, we'll go
That's
to
not
question 3.
Okay.
With sales tax revenue shrinking with the closure of some major retail stores in Bloomington, how can the city generate more revenue? Kevin, you want to start?
By increasing the amount of economic activity, by increasing our base, by allowing people to move in, get in business, employ folks, and move folks into town. Economic growth at the grassroots is where we're at, and I think that's what we need to do. Our small businesses are waiting to do this. They just need the signal that it's time that we can invest, and we can do that with some fair amount of assuredness that the city is not going to impede upon what they're doing with new taxes and fees.
Gary?
Yeah, I think it needs to be much more precise than what Alderman Lauer has suggested. And I think it requires you to have lots of tools in your toolbox. This is where I fundamentally differ with Mr. Lauer. You cannot just sit back and let the free market do things. You have to do things like create TIF districts in some situations, or you're going to be left behind in the international political economy. So if we're, again, as Alderman Lauer and I disagree, he voted against a TIF district. If we didn't, we would still have an abandoned Kmart and an abandoned Circuit City. And that is not money that we currently have. Now, whether or not Portillo's works out for Normal is another situation. We don't give people money up front. The project has to pay for itself. So if we rebate sales taxes to Dick's or to Home Goods for a certain period of time up to a certain maximum, we were getting no sales taxes out of an abandoned Kmart. We were getting no sales taxes out of an abandoned Circuit City. These were not just budget neutral, they were surpluses actually in terms of the deals that we cut. And when it comes to Ovation Cinema that Mr. Lauer voted against, they weren't asking for any subsidies. They were really only asking for two things. Mainly they wanted a liquor license. That's what Mr. Lauer voted against. I thought, wait a minute, you're coming to my town and you're going to expand this and create a $6 to $7 million investment so that you can reinvent your cinema, and we'll be the only one like it between St. Louis and Chicago. You're darn right I'm in favor of that. So those are the kinds of things that are necessary. At Green Top Grocery, the same thing. It's a little different story. We actually were bidding with Normal on that, and so sometimes there is inevitable competition. They wanted to have a grocery store in Uptown for lots of reasons. We wanted it either in our downtown or right on Constitution Trail. So again, the money, so there's no money that has come out of our budget that has funded Green Top Grocery. It is rebates for sales tax revenues that if we still had a vacant lot, we wouldn't be getting. So there are many ways that you have to leverage your assets, and just essentially saying, what I heard was fairly abstract rhetoric. We got to just do this, we got to do this, we got to set priorities, we got to get ground up. I don't know what that means. I've been in the world of economic development since I was ICMA for over 30 years. Nobody talks like that, who are real investors and makes deals in the real world.
Well, I disagree and I differ, obviously. Historically, if you look at statistics, TIF districts in a recession don't work. It puts everyone else at risk. Everyone else in the entire community has to pick up the slack. And yes, if everything works right, a TIF district will work out and it may pay for itself. But historically, that's not the case. Most do not. And to force this kind of stress on on our existing businesses is not something that we should be doing at the current time. If we allow our economy to organically improve on its own, all of these things will be reinvested in. That's along Veterans Parkway in the heart of our growth. And I can't imagine how somebody won't redevelop that eventually anyway. I'm sure it would have, but you can't expect folks to just out of the blue come in and invest in an economy that's not really growing. And so we're impeding on the natural growth cycle by trying to mess around with the environment. And quite frankly, I think it's not inviting. And so if we were in a burgeoning economy and we had something that had been sitting there for years and years and years, I would agree. It would be time at that point to try to attract attention there. I don't think we had to attract attention there. People were watching it, they were looking at it. They're currently looking at Eastland Mall. I hope that we don't go down this road unless we would start to grow our economy in a big way. So from that standpoint, I disagree. Ovation was a social issue. We're exposing our teenagers to liquor, and that is why Alderman Stearns and I voted against it. I am very worried about what the future might hold for those folks. Our teenagers have very little to do in the evenings other than go to a movie, and that's one of the things that I did here in Bloomington as a teenager, and thankfully I wasn't exposed to beer and liquor at that time. And so that was the thought process on both our minds when we voted against that liquor license. Green Top.
How does that differ from Fridays? I mean, the menu is virtually identical to Fridays. You could see people
it's
having beer
not
at
because it is entertainment. It is Fridays is an eating establishment, and so that's a restaurant. That is different. Yes, they did bring food in. It wasn't clear how much diversity they were going to bring in, and we were going to be exposing a large number of teenagers to beer and liquor, and we were very worried about it. That is the reason. I don't want to sit here and argue that fact over a small thing, but
We'll move to the next question.
Sure.
You guys covered that pretty well. Both of you have received some backlash over your use of social media. As elected public officials, how do you intend to use social media in the future?
I'll go ahead and start since I'm the poster child. So, no, essentially, in the era of social media, things happen very, very quickly. And as mayor, or in any position, even as an alderman, you have to act very, very slowly and prudently, even if it is something that you've been attacked unfairly, perhaps for years, and then somebody maybe aims at your son. I may be a father, but I'm also the mayor, right? And so I think mostly I stay away from social media unless I absolutely have to, and somebody asks me a question. I said, no, that's not true. Let me show you the facts. So mostly what I would say is, and my advice would be to Alderman Lauer as well, just apologize and move on and learn from your mistakes and don't do it again.
Okay, Kevin?
I would agree, and obviously I had not planned in my past to run for office, and things have been dug up that I've been politically active as a citizen. I've been socially active as a citizen, and I used social media many years ago, and these things were dug up from many, many years ago. They're not publicized that way. They're as if I had done that while I was a seated alderman. I'm sure that's not the case. But we do have to watch what we say and how we say it, and try to remain positive. Sometimes when we try to make a positive statement, it gets twisted around and it is perceived that we were being negative, and that was probably not the intent in the first place. But I think on both cases, we've got lessons to learn, and we need to be careful about how we handle not only social media, but media in general.
Okay. This is the last.
If I could
Go
just
ahead.
add in terms of the media, the thing that I would not want to do is to get to the point that I feel like I have to be so carefully guarded in what I say. Because I want to be as open and transparent as I possibly can, and I want to not have to choose my words, as some people say, in Clinton-esque fashion. So I think there is that fine line, and I think I'm constantly negotiating it. But I am much more careful, not so much because of these incidents, but because of sometimes things being reported, not necessarily by the Pantagraph, but many news outlets, in a way that seems to distort what we had intended.
Okay. Last question. A proposed 5-year capital improvement plan identifies about $337 million in capital needs for all city departments. including almost 60 million worth of projects that have funding secured, and about 277 million worth that don't. Where can the city cut spending further?
Well, essentially, if I could just address that, first of all, we do have lots of capital needs, as you've noted. And our infrastructure and streets and sewers and other things have been neglected for decades. We're not going to fix them in the short term, but we're going to be deliberative and make as much progress as we can. The thing that I would suggest is that it's also analogous to when you go and buy a house and there's the sticker shock of how much, if you pay it off over 30 years, you're going to pay. And you go, holy cow, I don't have that kind of money. But over 30 years, you can kind of float a note. We've got some debt we have very low per capita debt in Bloomington, about half of normal. We're lower than Decatur, we're lower than Peoria. So as we have debt that are going to be retired, we can issue new bonds over the next several years to cover some of these projects. Now, is it going to cover all of it? No. So we're going to have to make some tough choices, and that is, are there other things that we cut, or do we raise sewer fees? And again, the sewer fees that we're talking about, even if we only did it on the fee side, are something like about $1.25 a month over 3 years. And if you earmark that to pay for your bond, we could fix our $100 and some million sewers. So we are really talking about just mainly being disciplined and precise and trying to approach this from a variety of ways, because we can't borrow it all, and we certainly don't want to put it on the backs of fee increases to our citizens. And we probably also need to figure out ways, as we always are, to try to be more efficient and effective in our service delivery.
Well, there are a number of things that we can do to automate our administration and to make the city operate more efficiently. Prioritization is the basis for why I'm here. It's my belief and most of my constituency that many of the entertainment options that we offer should be morphed into a user fee. The folks attending those shows should be paying for all those shows, and we should not be subsidizing these venues into the future. It's a nice thing to do to get those started, but gosh, we can't do it forever. And right now in a recession, we can't afford to do that. So if we're going to have these venues, they need to break even. The folks that are coming to the entertainment options need to be paying for those.
Kevin, you're referring to BCPA and the
I
Coliseum?
am referring to the BCPA, I'm referring to the Coliseum, I'm referring to many of the things that we do in our Parks and Recreation Department. They're very, very nice, and it looks nice, and it helps the community grow. But can we afford to do that when we have all these other fundamental needs? I'm not sure. And so in terms of looking at how we're paying for things, we have to be very careful not to charge the folks that are least have least ability to pay for things that are not fundamental. And so if we're going to need to raise sewer fees, we better look at why that portion of their budget is being spent on the BCPA that they've never attended. Those are some things that we need to look at and reprioritize and look at how we can do things better.
I would, just to add to that, I would, not that obviously streets, public safety are our highest priorities. That's the overwhelming majority of the budget. The amount that we pay for amenities or subsidizing amenities is a comparatively small portion of the budget. And I think it's a critical component. How are we going to get residents and businesses to come here and invest if we have no amenities? I've never heard of a business saying, gosh, I'm moving to this place because they got great sewers, right? Sewers are something we have to do, but we also have to have amenities. If we, as we did, we examined privatizing our golf courses. It turned out it would cost us more money, and we backed off. Certainly, I think we can't charge kids to go on a playground and have them have coins or something. I'm not sure where we're going to
We can
do.
make the golf courses break even.
And they're roughly breaking even their operating costs. It's their capital costs that we don't.
And
And we're actually
paying-
we're very
and they should-
lean. Our staff. That's one of the things we realize is our staff is about half.
If
what
we're
a
going to
private
pave
company is.
golf course paths, those folks should be paying for that.
Sure.
If we can't pave our streets, and we are having businesses look at our community and ask us, point blank, what is the deal with your streets? And it's relevant.
And that's
Sorry.
again, that's why we so far we've been able to do both. Again, we put 300% more.
I
into
don't
street
agree. I
resurfacing.
think that we should be putting probably 1,000% more. $1.3 million out of an annual budget to repair streets is not enough.
We're not at
have to-
1.3 million.
We have to be dedicating.
We're
Yes,
nearly,
if you
we're
look
nearly
at,
6 million a year. And that's.
not if you're using that for street lighting, for many of the other things that go along. I'm talking about pavement resurfacing,
Mhm.
okay? No, we're not. We need to be dedicating around $5 million alone just to the pavement itself. Not the sidewalks, not the street lights, not the traffic lights, not all the other things that come along with it. It's $5 million a year
Kevin,
in
we're really,
pavement.
we're really pretty much there.
No, we're not.
Okay. But that's an empirical thing we can
All right.
clarify.